Good morning, everyone. We are going to call our meeting of the Board of Regents to order at 9 a.m. We are meeting in a workshop session of the Board of Regents. It is Tuesday, June 8th. Due to health and safety concerns related to COVID, we are having the public as well as some of our staff members participate in this meeting via teleconference or video conference. We do have the board here in person. Members of the public have been advised on how to watch the portions of this meeting on our website. I am going to happily call the roll of our board members. Regent Bennett. Here. Regent Garza. Here. Regent Averett.
Here.
Regent Adami. Here. Regent Hutchison. Here. Dr. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
We are all present. Thank you all for being here. We do have a quorum and can conduct business. We'll begin our meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Ms. Averett, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you would all please join me in reading the Del Mar College vision statement. It is written on our agenda and may momentarily be on our screen, but it is on our agenda. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from our official Board of Regents meeting on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting that are considered closed session by statute, excuse me. Do we have any public comments that have been registered for our workshop this morning?
There are none, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. Escamilla. Board members, before we jump in, since this is our first in-person meeting in quite a while, and our first in-person meeting for a number of regents who were appointed or elected in this interim, I want to welcome you to the Licensure boardroom. We are going to be here for a few more months, and then it is our plan to relocate our board meetings to the Center for Economic Development, the Del Mar College additional campus across from Ray High School. We're going to begin meeting there, we think, in the September-October timeframe.
September's the goal.
September is our goal. So we'll be here for a few more months, and we think that will, it's a much larger room, higher ceilings, will provide an opportunity for the public to participate, we think, to a greater extent, and parking in and of itself and just finding the room we think is going to be easier for members of the public as well. So we'll have a couple of more meetings here. During a workshop session, you are welcome to, we have some refreshments over here in the morning. The soft drinks and water are behind Mr. Kelly. As we joked at our last board meeting, Mr. Kelly is sitting in the freshman seat, and so he is adjacent to the snack bar. May not be long. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. We do have a number of staff members that are here that may be participating either in this workshop or maybe later on the day, and we do have additional staff members who are available via video conference. We do have a system that is not labeled correctly yet for you to ask a question, so we'll get that relabeled. But since we are here in person and I can't see you raising your hand or something like that, if you would just get my attention, and if we would allow one regent to finish their questions or comments on a topic, and then we'll go to the next regent. And then once we've gone through everybody, if you have a follow-up question, then you are welcome to continue the discussion. But we would like the opportunity for regents to get their questions or comments out there and answered before we interject and potentially change the subject. Am I missing anything else from a board protocol standpoint? I'm just so excited to see lovely faces around the table today. It makes me very thrilled. We do have 2 items for our workshop discussion today. First, talking about regional workforce needs, and then second, we're going to have a deep dive into our strategic plan, as we do kind of about once a quarter, to look at some of our key performance indicators. Following that, we will go into closed session for the remainder of the morning. So with that, I'm going to offer Dr. Escamilla an opportunity to introduce our first topic for the day.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Regents. Good to see you all collected and together in the same room. It's been a very long time. It's been an incredible year. That being said, Ms. Lenora Keys is going to be kicking us off this morning. As Chair Scott said, we have 2 topics, one regarding the regional workforce needs, and we've combined that, worked very nicely, and meshed that with our other and final strategic plan key performance indicator conversation. That's a mouthful. The last of the year that really compiles all the or completes the cycle of the strategic plan for the year. We've gone over that in numerous workshops, or several workshops anyway, and we'll be cycling that again, recycling this fall. Kicking us off again this morning is Lenora Keys, and just a little bit of background for those who may not know her. Lenora has been with the college for, let's just say, a good while. And sorry, Lenora, that never works. I always think of that as a strength, and it just doesn't come out. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. But what I want to know, what I want to tell you a little bit about Lenora's perspective. She grew up in Ingleside with an entrepreneurial family. Yes, Carol, I'm telling a story, I know. That's the way I think, I guess. But she comes from that background and has a great history, deep, rich history, with both sides of the bridge, like we like to say, and has this background that just is innate in her. That just this where makes this topic innate and so natural to her her presentation and knowledge. Longtime business department chair. She's taught business, been in the banking business, done all of these sorts of things. So yes, I'm bragging about Lenora right now, because what that means is it's a perfect complement to the workforce needs, the regional needs here from the college's administration's perspective, and that's what she brings. And of course, she's been working side by side with me for good long time now, well over 10 years. And she's the one who's been pushing this agenda and working with us and been the point of the spear. And I always brag that I'm the smartest one in the room because I'm smart enough to get the heck out of her way for over 10 years. And so I just kind of want to tee her up and ask her to come up to the microphone and talk to us about this topic that's so near and dear to her heart, frankly, and mine as well. Lenora?
Well, thank you, Dr. Escamilla. I didn't expect that. But thank you
Well,
very
we got
much.
new folks in the room, so yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Regents. It's wonderful to see all the faces again today. I have to reiterate that. It's just really nice. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this morning about regional workforce needs. It is a topic that's near and dear to my heart and has been greatly involved over the last few years. What we're going to start with, though, is identifying our regional strategic partners, because within workforce, we wouldn't be here as a community college if we didn't have our partners. We're going to review the economy as it directly impacts workforce needs, introduce workforce and economic study that was directly prepared through the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation this past fall with a company called Newmark. And it's a 210-page report that is actually on their website that's quite extensive and very, very supportive. And so I'm going to share a little bit of that with us today as it supports what we're talking about. Of course, our other partners are the Texas Workforce Commission and Workforce Solutions here of the Coastal Bend. And so a lot of the data and information that we're sharing this morning will come from these sources. And we're going to end up with looking at focusing on the workforce needs that we meet as a community college through our technical programs and our academic programs. This is a list of the regional strategic partners who we interface with and our sources of data, just to share with you really the impact that we have and the reach and breadth that we do within our working relationships throughout the region. I think it's quite impressive when you see how far the staff and the faculty really reach within our programs. So this is what this is focusing on. This is the impressive whiz-bang slide that the $52 billion in capital investment that's come into our region in the last 10 years is so impressive, and we're very beneficial. We've all benefited from this. The college prepares our students for these jobs and to meet the employer's needs. And as we focus on the presentation this morning, we're going to begin looking at the skilled workforce and the needs that are out there tied to this. If you notice the cluster to the far right across the bay, of course, is in San Patricio County. And number 38 is Steel Dynamics there in Sinton. And then the other cluster around the Port of Corpus Christi and leading down to the west. However, this slide does give you the names of the major companies that have come in over the last 10 years who've really brought this, the capital investment into our region. And then a lot of the presentation today will talk about the direct and indirect impact that these companies have had on us. We can't really talk about the economy without looking at the Port of Corpus Christi. The Port of Corpus Christi, since the first presentation I made, it was the 5th or 6th largest in the country. Now we can brag and say it's the 3rd largest based on total tonnage for revenue and the 2nd largest exporter of crude in the United States. And actually, they were the first to export crude in the United States. But all of the jobs, or not all, but most of the jobs that we look at within business and industry are either directly or indirectly tied to the growth within the Port of Corpus Christi. So they're such a significant contributor to our economy and the workforce. Part of this study that came out of Newmark, I'm going to share their slides along the way, but this one is looking at a comparison of our labor force. And I felt like it was a good place to start as we can compare it to the state of Texas and the United States. One of the things that Newmark did was that they actually identified some comparative cities throughout the country that they compared our MSA to. However, I did want to point out the growth rate for Corpus Christi labor force is rolling right at 2.3% over the last 9-year span. When we compare that to Port Arthur, Beaumont-Port Arthur area, they went down 5% over that 9-year period. However, Texas as a whole grew by 14.7% and the United States by 5.6%. So the good news is we're growing, but during this 9-year period, we're still lagging the state. However, I'd like to go back and reflect on that $52 billion of investment that is still being built out, and the jobs that are going to come with that are still yet to come. So we hope that the next 10 years that the turn could be in the other direction for us as an MSA. However, this does give us a basis point as we look forward into how we compare with the state as a whole. Texas Workforce Commission reports that the top 5 job postings right now is in healthcare, retail trade, transportation, professional services, and administration and waste management. So as we look at our MSA, this is kind of key to recognize, and as we begin to align these with our programs here at the college, you'll see these topics come up further. As an economy begins to come out of COVID-19 downturn, the Texas Workforce Commission reported as of this May that almost 700 new jobs were added between March and April. However, I want to give a benchmark that this was down from 3,000 jobs during the month of March. However, this still has impacted the hospitality industry the most. They show right now through survey, and this is a recent survey that was done as of May the 21st actually, that there are over 2,000 jobs openings within our MSA in the hospitality industry. And that would include our restaurants, even in our hotels and things like that, which many of you see as you get out and about town again. So this is an area that is the more low wage areas of our economy are a little bit slower to come back. And so this is a potential area that we need to focus on. The unemployment rate is coming down for our area. It's down to 7.9% compared to 8.8% a month ago. But however, we compare to Texas at 5.7%. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. 6.3% for Texas and 5.7% for the nation. So we're still lagging the state in lowering our unemployment rate, is the bottom line. But we're getting better. I realize this slide has quite a bit of information on it. However, I did want to share with you the overall impact of COVID-19 and job loss. And as you look at the left two columns, you can see the negative change by sector of business as the jobs have gone down. The only area that has really increased in jobs would be in transportation, trade, and utilities, which has gone up. And I am proud to say that our commercial truck driving program continued all year during COVID. And we continued to produce commercial truck drivers, test them, and get people out on the road and meet this need.
Can I just add a little commercial? I'm always, anytime I can brag about the college, I'm going to. We had one of the very large districts come and take a look at our truck driving program just recently. They sent a full complement of teams, starting with their top vice chancellor. They're very good friends of mine, of ours, and they came to look at our model because they have, through their research, have found out that our program is absolutely at the top of the truck driving programs of any of the community colleges in Texas. And so they sent a team down here to come and soak up, and we soak up all the information, and our team hosted them for a full day. I think a day and a half of that, actually. It was an overnight thing. So anyway, just FYI, a little commercial there.
Thank you, yes. And so we have drawn people from all over the country and the state because our team was able to continue during COVID. And I will add, we put people where we normally have 4 students to 1 instructor in a cab in the trucks and the 18-wheelers. We did go down to 1-to-1 with plexiglass and masks, and the instructors continued to make it happen and to work and to deliver those people for those jobs. And so I just keep bragging on those instructors that made it happen all year long during COVID-19. So it's impressive. But I think that this slide goes to prove the need and the direct effect that it had on our MSA and employment within our sectors as it is a region. We work directly with Texas Workforce Solutions of the Coastal Bend, and one of the main focuses that we use as a college and then as a labor force is to look at the targeted occupations list. And I'm providing that list over the next few slides, and again, it's with a lot of data. However, I did want to present it in a summary format. The key categories that you will see within the workforce within our region are on this targeted occupation list, and it is prepared by the Texas Workforce Commission, and this is the most recent list as of fall of 2020. Okay. The first large category is the variety of jobs under the business sector, and I'm going to show you 3 or 4 sectors, but this is the key sector. This shows the number of jobs in different fields and their potential earnings. You'll see from high to low earnings. The specific categories, even such as paralegal and legal assistant, is listed down towards the bottom with 560 jobs here locally. The largest group of jobs for fall of 2020 was in journal operations managers, followed by bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing. And then the third largest was medical secretaries and administrative assistants. And this again is just under this sector. However, I'd like to point out as we go through these sectors and titles, when you look at our programs, you're going to see a complete alignment with what we offer here at the college within our programs and what the faculty credentials bring to us. Okay. The next sector has to do with professional skills and trades. Looking down the list of jobs is a direct correlation to the various industrial trade programs here at the college. For example, the highest number of jobs is heavy and tractor-trailer truck drivers at over 3,600 jobs. Operating engineers and other construction equipment operators at over 1,600 jobs. Welders, cutters, and solderers and brazers is the third largest at 1,400 jobs. And I'm going to add, I believe that number is underestimated. and you align that directly with our programs that we've shown you. The next broad category has to do with healthcare, and the number of jobs in nursing assistant and registered nurse is significantly high as you look down that column. However, occupational health and safety specialist, physical therapist assistants also pays the highest wages. So the wages and the number of jobs in the healthcare industry is quite significant. Public service is the fourth sector. This includes our police, our firefighters, and our educators, among others. There's a wide range of hourly wages in police and sheriff patrol officers. If you'll notice, it goes from $11.51 to $40.21. And if y'all have been out in the mall recently, I even saw the sheriff's department out trying to recruit sheriff's deputies for the jail. And so those job openings, I think, goes to testify what you see here in the wide range of salaries can potentially impact that too. I'd like to now share some of the more specific information coming out of the Newmark study that was prepared by the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. Many of your leading industry partners, as well as Del Mar College, helped fund this study. And it's over 210 pages and located on their website if you're interested, and there's 2 PowerPoint presentations that go with it. It's quite in-depth and very insightful, and it goes into many aspects. I'm going to hit the tops of them this morning, but if you're interested, it's there on their website, and it's quite impressive. The focus of this report was to update their previous strategic plans for the CCREDC and their targeted industry study. One of the key objectives was to understand higher education and the skill sets required for the workforce, and that's why it's so important for us today. Newmark's targeted industry list ended up focusing on 4 different areas, and I'm also proud to say Del Mar College was listed on every 4 topics. Specialty steel production is one. Of course, we've already identified what's going on in Sinton, and then the ancillary companies that are coming along with them. And then your shale oil, natural gas, pipeline industry, and NLG, and it should be LNG, is really, they use NGL, but we're big with Cheniere Energy and liquid natural gas production. And aerospace industry, they noticed that we have a hangar and FAA programs out at the airport, and Del Mar College is FAA certified to produce airplane repair mechanics and whatever. So as we get into the aerospace industry, they recognize that that's a potential gain for our area. And of course, entrepreneurship and small business growth is another area. And again, Del Mar College was noted as a strength in that field. When we look at the workforce, we have to look at what's going on with our competitive assets within the region. And this slide shows where they identified workforce development and readiness as a strength. And we were interviewed. Dr. Escamilla, I believe, was interviewed, and 2 or 3 of us were interviewed during this study. And of course, we were listed under higher education too. But you notice that we are in the leadership position here as a strength, and very proud of that. However, when we look at the needs of workforce, we have to look at the challenges too. And the ones that directly impact workforce had to do with around job openings and availability. Workforce housing is a real issue right now, and there's a deficit of workforce housing that's affordable within a close range of where the jobs are. And of course, student engagement and brain drain is another field that was talked about. When you get into the study, though, they're really tracking the 4-year bachelor degree students, and they did note that the blue-collar workers within our region, who is our skill set, who we work with, are higher paid and on average make over $75,000 a year. So that was a real plus. However, these are factors that we want to address, would be the challenges that we're all facing. Of the 66 recommendations that the Newmark study made, 11 had to do with workforce development. and small business entrepreneurship, which both are big areas for us as a college. To give you an example of the workforce development recommendations, one was for the CCREDC to hire someone to focus on workforce. Another was to develop housing for the workforce. Where it directly impacted us, there were a couple, and that had to do with identifying the gaps in the skill sets that exist. And we are working on that through our advisory committees and our technical programs and continuing to work on those skill sets. And then the other was to take what we're already doing to scope and scale, meaning just do more of it. And so we were recognized for many of the good things we're doing, but they're recognizing this growth that's coming and to how to support it more. This slide summarizes, and I wanted to add it because it summarizes the key big companies that we're dealing with right now, the number of jobs and their specific capital and contribution to the economy as to what they're doing. If you notice, Steel Dynamics is listed, but I wanted to point out that of Steel Dynamics, 3 of the companies shown here are here because of Steel Dynamics and the jobs that they're bringing. And I understand that there's really 8 to 10 companies that are located here now because of Steel Dynamics. So as you see the large industrial complexes such as Steel Dynamics and Gulf Coast Growth Ventures come in alignment and come into production, we're seeing more and more ancillary companies come and bring their capital investments and then want to hire people locally. And that message is heard again and again from industry and big business that they want to hire people locally. They want our students to be their employees because they recognize that once they train them up, then they'll stay. Otherwise, people come and go back home. And so it's a great opportunity for our community.
Lenora, can I just add one more?
Sure.
There's a data point that I've been using, we've been holding on to, and it's held steady for the better part of the past decade, and that is 93% of our graduates stay in our local metropolitan area for 5 years or more after graduation. What that means to me is that 75, even 80% stay forever. So that's very important. That's very attractive to prospective employers. When I share that with them, they are all over that. They understand that. They appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to track the graduates, like those who are coming in after high school graduation versus the dual credit, and how they're aligned into funneling into these jobs, into the local job market? I know you said 93. I'm just wondering because I know there's the high schoolers and then there's,
Right.
graduates. So I was just wondering how those programs are just feeding into these job markets, and maybe that's why they're staying. They're not moving off to college, or they're just finishing off here.
It's a great question. We are tracking the dual credit numbers and how many of them stay or continue on in general. And then we have ancillary data, I would call it, particularly in Gregory Portland, where we have the process technology program and the welding program. We know that those students are getting hired, by, in fact, Gulf Coast Growth Ventures has their own scholarship that they really want the monies to go to people from Gregory or Portland, that type of thing, or from San Pat. And so we do track them, but not in a cohort number per se.
Yeah. Workforce Solutions would probably have those data. We can check into it. I see Christina writing, taking notes back there on that one. So we'll
Sorry, I don't want to,
That's okay.
more
That's
work.
okay.
No, it's good.
No, we have
It's
it
good.
somewhere. We have it. It may just be disaggregated somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. It's a good point, and we know within the programs, but we can get the data. Sure. Thank you. No problem. Okay. This next slide is showing what's going on now that has not been announced. And you're looking at additional almost $11 billion in direct capital investment that's in addition to the $52 billion that's out there, and over 1,800 jobs. And by classification or sector, when you're looking at petrochemical, steel, distribution, drones, energy recycling, and advertising, advanced manufacturing. And so there's just more on the horizon that is yet to be announced, still coming. I added this slide because, again, it further breaks down the number of companies, the amount of their capital investment, and the number of jobs. It relates back to the first or second slide of 52 billion. And this goes on to a second page. But I want you to see the company names where you've got Cheniere Energy, someone who we work with directly, Flint Hills, HEB, different types of sectors and different types of major investors, and the capital investment that they've made within our MSA just in the last several years, and then the number of jobs that it's created. When we go to the total there's $38 billion of what we were looking at, and over 5,600 jobs that we can track and work on. One of the new ones has to do with Shit Audio, if you look about 2/3 down, and that is a group that's moved here from California, and they are manufacturing a sound component for gaming. And it's just an interesting piece of small business that when you look at an impact, I believe, from COVID, is that individuals looking to relocate their manufacturing, small business, are finding Corpus Christi to be quite beneficial, and our standard of living and our quality of life attracts them. And so we're having other small businesses similar to this come into our area. And so it leads to a great opportunity as we look at what's going on regionally. Okay. In fact, I just want to share, the individuals with Shit Audio did a presentation at the annual meeting for Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Board, and they just could not believe why everybody else from California wasn't here. And so, and they are bringing other small business with them. And so again, this correlates back to that Newmark study as to what they're saying about small business and entrepreneurship and the Coastal Bend being able to attract that. I wanted to share now some of what the college is doing, is how we are positioning ourselves to address these needs. And as you'll see, a correlation, I believe, from the titles of the jobs and the job sectors and the salaries as we focus on our different programs and resources. The industrial programs are supported by world-class technology, donated in part by industry and the city through the Type A Business Incentive Fund. These are located on West Campus and in the new Workforce Development Center. And I hope to have this summer where we can have a big open house now and demonstrate what's going on over there, and everyone have a chance to have a hands-on view of seeing how this is directly impacting industry. Of course, our Workforce Development Center provides the programs that you see there on the left. In addition, the Transportation Services has its own facility there on the far right. And as you can see, this ties directly back to those job sectors where the job demand is in our region. Our Center for Economic Development continues to be a thriving resource, and with our Small Business Development Center located there, the Contractors Resource Center, and PTAC, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Program to help any small business make a bid for a state or federal type contracting. They're all located within the Center for Economic Development. We soon will have a Workforce Development Center in Aransas County, and that we've participated with a grant, and the Aransas County will be owning the Workforce Development Center. However, we will be providing the programs and managing the facility to deliver these types of highly skilled workforce programs and to help them to diversify their economy, particularly after being hit so hard by Hurricane Harvey. So the workforce over there in our service area has been hurt, and so this is an opportunity that we as a college will be able to fulfill. One of our key areas to work with business and industry is our Corporate Services Department, and they provide customized training to business and industry and proprietary workforce needs so that they can customize whatever is needed to meet those skill sets. We're very proud of their long-term working relationships with Gulf Coast Growth Ventures. That contract was over $5 million over a 3-year period, where they were able to go on site and provide the leadership and safety training as the project was built out. This year, we were able to train their commissioning crew. They brought in over 250 employees worldwide and continued through COVID-19 protocols on West Campus. We trained their commissioning crew, and they've been out commissioning the plant and ready to bring it up full service. One of the salient points about this type of work is that it keeps us very current as to what's going on in the workforce and what is needed and what type of skill sets are needed right now within the new technology that's being built within all this business and industry. Of course, our continuing education department programs are highly impactful throughout the area. We can provide adult basic education, which are GED credentials, but we were able to align those with programs such as HVAC or air conditioning so that people leave with their GED and at the same time can go to work with a skill. This type of education, our workforce training, is provided by Texas Workforce Skills grants. And you see the variety of programs that they very successfully provide in healthcare and carpentry and a variety of personal enrichment. One of the key things that we do to meet the industry needs in our advisory committees that are for every technical program has an advisory committee. And one of the major recommendations that they identify as a key need is that the workforce needs to have not only college credit credentials, but industry-specific credentials, such as NAPTA, which is North American Process Technology Alliance, our NCCER, are these credentials that you see before you. Here at the college, it is a strategic goal of ours that your technical programs provide students with industry-specific credentials throughout all of our programs, healthcare, real estate, whatever it is, so that they leave here with a college credential along with an industrial credential. What this does is it meets the workforce needs in the most current and highly impactful way for hiring. Because when that student walks in to apply for a job, they know exactly what skill set and what kind of curriculum they've had. So we embed these credentials along with our programs.
Can I have a question, for example, on NCCER?
Yes.
Is that one credential, or are there a number of programs that are certified under the NCCER program?
Excellent question. There are a number of different credentials that they receive within NCCER, but at the same time, it's layered over a variety of programs. Carpentry, welding, instrumentation, they're all key certificates within NCCER that they can receive. For example, there's the core, which is the basics, and it covers all three of those areas. And so students can leave with the NCCER core credential in any of those areas. Like in welding, we're looking at AWS, which is the most recognized out in welding. However, there is a welding NCCER credential that they could also receive.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? This is listing just additional certifications that are accredited within our healthcare area, and a variety of EMS, dental imaging, medical assisting, aviation, our FAA programs. These are more examples of how we've taken those needs within the workforce and tied them to these specialized accreditations. So when students leave here, they're fully credentialed. Again, emergency response programs is prime here at the college and needed throughout the entire area. Our EMS department and emergency response safety police area covers the entire 11 county region to meet those workforce needs and to credential those employees. And our health sciences and healthcare programs is listed. These are all licensed programs where they may be receiving state licensure. If you'll notice on here is your nursing, nurse's aide. All these tie back to that in-demand occupation list, what we listed before. Yes, sir. Sure.
This is a program that's really taken on a life of, I say a program, it's not a program. This listing of health science programs is really taken on a life of its own. And what I've seen over the years as this has been growing, because this is the amount of production that we have now in this area, the amount of courses and students and graduates with these certificates now is very different than what it was just a few short years ago. But what's happening is students who are moving into terminal degrees and going into those 2-year certification programs and or associate degree nursing and those kinds of things are taking all of these as prerequisites. What's also happening, and I'm seeing this, I'm hearing about this all over, is that students that are going on to university, pursuing health careers, pre-med, pre-nursing, all these other things, dental and everything else, are taking these credentials with them to university. And what I'm also hearing is that these students that are out in the university, guess what they're looking for when they're looking for student employment? They're using these credentials to really propel them and position themselves while out at university, at their respective universities. So lots of things happening here, and these credentials right here, again, as prerequisites to pre-health programs or health programs, is really powerful. But I think we've only begun to see the impact of these programs, because these students are going into these very high-powered post-baccalaureate health professions with these credentials, and they're being recognized for them. The universities and the employers all over. But where the universities are both as a university and as an employer, it's just really, really a phenomenal thing to see. So anyway, just had to add that.
No, thank you, and thank you. It's, I would like to add, to me, these credentials quite often are, I'm going to call it the ticket to the job. In that when employers are looking at a variety of resumes, what makes you stand out is whether or not you have this additional credential that's directly related to the skill set that they're looking for.
And they're getting them largely through dual credit. That's the point. I'm sorry, that's the point of distinction. They're getting these credentials while they're in high school as dual credit students. So getting out of high school probably never again to step foot on college necessarily, moving on to university and taking those credentials with them. It's just a phenomenal thing to see.
Now, I only have one concern is with all these programs and with enrollment down due to COVID and so forth, is that do we have enough people in these programs to keep it viable where it's being cost effective?
So yes, that's the area of our overall enrollment that is dramatically up. In fact, I have some data here that I'll share later. In fact, the contact hours for continuing education was up 28%. Okay, that was specifically because of these programs right here. And do we have to answer your question, do we have, I think there's probably going to be a bigger surge in enrollment in the future. I think that might be an issue, but we're doing really well to keep up right now, and that's in the minority position.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have enough people in these programs to keep them up and running.
We've done a phenomenal job, and like I said, I'm going to have some.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'd like to add, these are the programs that were continued during the COVID-19 era, face-to-face, mainly on West Campus, but primarily on West Campus or in dual credit scenarios. But when we were looking at 40% of the college face-to-face, it was primarily in these industrial and allied health programs, and so they were able to continue. Yeah. So they didn't lose as much impact, I think, that way. Another field that we, of course, have credentialing and meet the needs of the target workforce list is through business administration. And going back to that very second or third slide where I looked at the business sector, you'll see these stand out. And of course, culinary arts is on here too, and it relates to hospitality management and the great need that we see in those job openings right now. Management development, of course, is one of the first areas and the largest areas on that targeted occupation list, and so we're working to meet those needs. And really, it's all working together as we reach these highly skilled and workforce-ready skills and provide these programs to meet these needs in the workforce. And I'm open for questions or anything else that you might have at this point.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keys. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Garza.
Yes, sir.
Go back to the slide that had the challenges. Sorry.
Sure.
Do I need to turn this on so you can hear me? Okay. Right there. A couple things. I see there where workforce housing is deficit.
Yes, sir.
That's one of the challenges. And then we go over to 2 slides down, infill redevelopment and blight removal.
Yes.
Those two challenges could be solved in the same manner. I think that it's not our realm to be able to affect policy at the city level, but certainly figuring out ways to encourage infill redevelopment versus continuing expansion at greenfield could create an opportunity to provide some of that workforce housing and be able to solve two challenges
Yes.
if it's pushed in the right direction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then I saw something else, somewhere water quality and available reserves. It's been a while since I've been on the EDC, probably, I've been out probably about 8 meetings or so, but 8 months. I know we talked about desal, and I still believe that that's going to be, I'm going to say, a solution for us long term. But with the recent, and only because of my interaction with Rudy and him being in the power energy sector, I'm understanding that water's not the only determining issue and our resource needed in order to continue job expansion, that
Electricity.
additional investment in capital dollars in electricity is going to be a challenge, particularly with SDI's
Yes, sir.
use of so many of the resources or so much of the power generated in this area. So those two need to be, I want to say, looked at to determine which is the most critical path in order to make sure that the public entities make the investments in the right places.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate what you're saying. These are the topics. I'll add, I'm privileged to sit on the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Board and with you for a while. And these topics are highly brought about and discussed by that entire board. And of course, the power outage in February is talking about where not just water is concerning, but electricity and the consistent availability of electrical power.
The other thing, sorry.
What would be the college's role in infill housing and workforce housing?
It would be ancillary. I mean, I don't see a direct role, but we've been asked to provide courses more closely to where people live. That's one role. I mean, where we deliver our programs would be impactful in getting to where people live. And so, and we also take training to where they work. And so it reduces some of that.
Yeah.
But those are issues.
Well, if I can, I think I can shed a little bit more light on your question, I think. And that is our investment in the Economic Development Corporation. I mean, that's a big time commitment that we've had for a very long time. And Lenora, I used to sit on the board, and then Lenora sits on the board now. And it's an investment that brings all of that to the forefront for our discussion here. And so it's a very secondary and even tertiary kind of topic with infill and energy production and water distillation and or desalination and so forth. Maybe it's the same thing. But us being in that conversation is the critical part. And it does complement our curriculum. It does complement our part. Again, we're a catalyst. We're not a driver. Those are the port industries and all of those big refineries in the base and the hospitals. Those are the economic drivers. We catalyze it. It's important that we're at the table, that we remain at the table. We do make a significant investment there, and I would say that, but it's really nominal in comparison to what we've received. There's the rest of the story with the EDC. Type A grants that we've received over the years is in the millions, okay? And other types of grants that EDC has helped us. We pay a nominal membership, but it's actually significant. But relative to that, if you ever see that or hear about that, I want you to know about this. It's a $10,000 a year investment to sit at that table, to be part of it. But we've received millions, literally millions in return, and it is nominal in relation. I want all of you all to know that together. We've had these conversations in years past. So it's an important partnership with the EDC, and we've got to be at the table so that we can understand it as well and how it impacts all of us here at the college.
One last question, and again, I know that we can't control what happens there, but we can at least have the conversations with folks that are in the power to make to make those decisions, you
I
know.
completely agree, and
Right.
and I'm seeing that we would have a role, but I can remember beating my head against the infill development and affordable housing
I know.
for 8 years in 2000s. It does seem more like a city and private sector, but the city, I think, is in a position to make that possible. But I like your suggestion, and I suspect there are a lot of potential employees that can't get the training because of transportation issues
Right.
or not sophisticated about the RTA and that sort of thing. So that was creative. I like that.
Thank you, thank you.
Isn't
Yes,
that
sir.
also one of the reasons why we're expanding to Aransas Pass and those areas, is to make sure that they are being trained and having the education that they need because of transportation issues?
Mr. Garza, you have some more questions or comment?
Off of this particular issue or discussion, I saw what you were doing and talking about related to the health sciences and people getting their certifications and then possibly working in the work sector while they're pursuing an advanced degree. And I was thinking back to the shortages of employees in the hospitality sector. We have a hospitality management program.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if some of the folks that are studying hospitality management, not that they would want to long-term do some of the jobs related to the hospital, what's needed in the hospitality sector right now, but if it might not be beneficial to both employers in terms of filling some of those positions and to the students that are looking at hospitality management as a career to be able to help fill some of the shortfalls in the short term. I don't know if there's a certificate that can be
Like
offered in terms of just being able to,
To help process that along, move it
Yeah.
along.
or
It's a-
to make sure that the rooms are properly cleaned or made up or whatever it is.
Like
Just
internships?
like
I
an
mean, do we
internship
offer
or
internship
something that
programs? I
that would
mean,
allow
is it
them to
part
be
of
able
the
to work.
programs?
We do. We have internships in those programs, and to follow up with, one of the things we do, like through partnering with continuing education, we do the food handler certificates. We do a lot of things that are the entry level to get those people in those jobs. And so, yes, sir, we do pair those areas that where we can to get those people moving on into the jobs. And I think you're going to see this turn around, this 2,000 jobs turn around over the next month. As summer gets back and people are getting back to work, you're going to start seeing more people come into these jobs.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. I do want to make one more point, and that's on the placemaking and amenity service. We recently toured the consultants that the CCRADC brought into town on place, and they're directly looking at how do we enhance the community so that people want to come here. One of the shortfalls or recommendations had to do with spouses, and then when we attract workers, then how do you provide for the whole family? And we at the college were able to tour through the new general academic building and all of the nice amenities we have. They were so impressed with what's going on here and through the drama and all of the ancillary programs that we have in fine arts. So I don't want to leave them out, and that they play a big role. Your whole fine arts and sciences programs play a large role in meeting these challenges too. So thank y'all very much.
Regents, are there
Appreciate your
additional
time. Anything
questions or
else?
comments? I do want to, obviously, in each of these areas, we could drill down to just incredible detail about individual programs and what's going on. So if you do have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to contact Dr. Escamilla or Ms. Keys. And at the right point in time, we are going to restart our tours of campuses, and so that you can get an idea of some of the facilities we're talking about. So for those of you who are new, that is part of our onboarding process, is to actually give you an opportunity to tour some of our campuses and talk directly to faculty and get a sense of what's going on. So if there's some specific interests that you have as part of those tours, again, let Dr. Escamilla, Ms. Keys, Dr. Villarreal know what you're interested in, and we can customize those tours on what you're interested in as well. So.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you very much. Again, now we're going to turn to our strategic plan, And as part of our regular ongoing review of the plan and specific key performance indicators, we have divided this into groups so that we're not looking at the entire plan only once a year, but we're taking a couple of segments several times a year so we can do a deeper dive and really be able to absorb the information. So with that, Dr. Escamilla, do you have an introduction?
Just that Christina Wilson has been leading this charge over the last year, and we've learned a lot together over the last year as we've broken up the strategic plan, which is our framework for operating. Regents, frankly, that plan is just paper and it's just ink. We can change it as we need to, as we see fit, and those are the purposes of both of these presentations. So the things that you extrapolate, these questions that you've asked, and we're taking notes and we're listening, are possible tweaks and adjustments to the strategic plan and the goals and strategies from within. Okay, that's what happens. So as we circle in, finish up this year, we're going to learn what we've learned. Hopefully, going into next year, these conversations will be about obviously having another layering, if you will, of discussion, but also tweaking and adjusting the plan accordingly as we see fit. Because, like I've said, year after year after year, every year has been a different year by far. They're never the same, and so the plan is there for us to change as we need, as we see fit. But we got to do that together and collectively. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, for leading us off with today's conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Escamilla. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be here in person and see all of your faces in person. Good to see you. As Dr. Escamilla said, this is the final workshop in this round of looking at our strategic plan goals and KPIs, and we're always seeking to improve. Having gone through this first round, we've already learned about what we want to look further into. We've already thought through what we want to tweak for the next cycle, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk this through with you, answer your questions, and help us to understand better the experience of our students and the needs of our community.
Dr. Wilson, if you don't mind making sure that you're speaking into the mic, it just is helpful for both us and the audience that's listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I never know if I'm too close or too far. Our plan, entitled Aspire, Engage, Achieve, was officially adopted by the Board of Regents in September of 2019 and includes 6 overarching goals. Each goal has established KPIs and objectives. The college has also developed an operational plan, as Dr. Escamilla mentioned, that is tweaked and updated annually. In September of 2020 and March of 2021, the Board of Regents participated in workshops on goals 1 and 2, and also 3 and 4. And today we will be taking a close look at goals 5 and 6 of the strategic plan. And though this is the final workshop of this cycle, we are planning to start over again with goals 1 and 2 this fall. Goal 5 of the plan focuses on workforce development, community partnerships, and advocacy. Goal 6, oops, I think I'm going the wrong way. I apologize. Goal 6 centers on financial effectiveness and affordability. Each goal has a set of KPIs, and for each KPI, we will be discussing the most recent data and comparing this to our thresholds and targets. We will also be looking at trends and how the college has performed over time. Additionally, for each of the goals, we will discuss the college's strategies for meeting the KPI thresholds and targets. I'll leave time for questions after each KPI, but please feel free to ask questions as we look at each of the slides. And my colleagues will be joining me as well today to help me discuss data and our strategies. We will start the review of each KPI with a look at our most recent data, which you can call a data snapshot. Each KPI also has an identified threshold and target. Thresholds are the college's acceptable level of achievement, which you may call our minimum target. Thresholds that are not met indicate to us that we might want to put some additional effort towards them, some additional resources. Another aspect of what we look at when we analyze our KPIs is looking at our targets. These are our aspirational objectives for improvement, which you may call our stretch goals. When reviewing the data snapshots, you'll see that thresholds and targets are color-coded. green meaning that the threshold was met, and red meaning that the threshold or target was not met. It's a good practice to celebrate our strengths as a college, but it's an even better practice to celebrate or to find where we can improve. So through this process, we try to take a very balanced eye and figure out where we're strong and where we'd like to put our resources. The purpose of monitoring our KPIs is improvement. No matter how strong of a college we are and no matter our amount of wins, we must always seek to improve and ensure that we are meeting the ever-evolving needs of our students and our community. Today we will discuss where we are now, what our most current data shows. We will discuss how we compare to our peers and to ourselves over time. And we also will discuss where we want to be. Today our goal is to understand the Del Mar College story, and this is the final piece of the story, goals 5 and 6. For each KPI, we will compare ourselves to our large Texas college peers where possible. And many of you have seen this list of peers before, but I want to take a moment just to discuss them one more time, just a reminder. It's important that we understand who makes up this peer group. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board groups colleges according to enrollment size, and Del Mar College is considered a large college. The fall 2020 enrollment for our peer group ranges from 5,000 students at Laredo College to 18,000 students at Blinn College. That's quite a wide range, and also keep in mind the impact of COVID has impacted us all differently. However, we are still within that same peer group. And it's important to recognize that while comparing ourselves to our peer group is valuable, there's no college that's just like Del Mar College. It gives us some excellent context in which to compare ourselves, but there are some differences that just can't be measured based on size alone. Okay. All right. So let's get started with goal 5, workforce development, community partnerships, and advocacy. This goal focuses on our work to foster and strengthen our external partnerships locally and across the state and nation. Meeting local workforce needs is an essential part of the college's mission. As Ms. Keys explained to us, a lot of the progress that has been made over the years, and of course very recently, the things that we're proud of. And another very important part of our mission is advocacy, and ensuring the needs of our students and our region are being voiced on a state and local level. Goal 5 has 3 key performance indicators. Each KPI tells a key piece of our story, and we will be looking at each one from several angles. KPIs 1 and 2 are Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board metrics. KPI 1 is graduate job placement. This KPI looks at the percentage of our graduates who are found to be working or enrolled in college within 1 year of completing a degree or certificate. We have exceeded our KPI threshold of 87%, and we seek to meet a target of 91% by 2024. Our rates are slightly higher than the Texas large peer group average. Here's a visual representation of our 5-year trends for this particular KPI. And you'll see the target that we have set for ourselves for 2024 indicated by the blue star. Our threshold line is indicated by the red dotted line. And as you can see, our rates have remained consistent over the last 5 years. Here you will see the details of this KPI for Del Mar College, our large college peers, and all Texas colleges. Also included is a breakdown of the percentage of students found to be working only, enrolled only, and working and enrolled. Our total rates are consistent with or just above the large college cohort and also the state average. I will take a moment here to pause for any questions.
Doctor,
Yes, sir.
does this include dual credit?
This includes any student who earned a certificate or degree, so yes, it would include dual credit as well. And that's partially why it's important to see that some of our students will continue to be enrolled. As we discussed as part of the prior presentation, some of our students, including dual credit, go directly into the workforce, but others are really just starting their path. So this measure includes, as a whole, found working and enrolled, but also there's some of our students, of course, that go directly into the workforce.
So when you're looking at the enrolled only, does that include Del Mar and universities? So you know that they're continuing their education, or is just those who are just still in the Del Mar college system?
This is an excellent question. This looks at any student that's enrolled in the state of Texas. So that is a wider scope, but of course there's also those students that leave the state. But for the most part, as we've discussed this morning and in prior meetings, our students stay here. So this looks at any enrollment in the state of Texas.
Regent Bennett, do you have additional questions?
I do, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The head count, the number of students, is that the full-time equivalent? How are we counting the students?
Sure. What we look at isn't head count in this regard. We look at students who have earned a degree or certificate. So when we talk about head count, usually we talk about that in terms of enrollment. So this is looking at anyone who earned a degree or certificate.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm talking about a prior. We're comparing ourselves to the large colleges, and we have 10,000 some students. Is that full-time equivalent? What does that number represent?
I see what you're getting at. That is head count. When we were discussing our peer group and the enrollment, that's looking at head count. Yes, sir.
State asks us for head count, and that's why that focuses. That's why we focus on that. And the other thing that I'd like to add, this is what's so important about guiding the curriculum. You know, we in order to meet these kinds of job placement needs, this is what brings to mind our efforts of listening to what employers are asking for. Not just topics, but the nuanced pieces of the curriculum in terms of subtopics within. What this job placement really is the end result of us listening to our employers. This is the end result. This is the fruit of our labor here in that regard. And so this goes back to our previous presentation and conversation about the importance of you all understanding the economy, we understanding the economy together, because this is where our students benefit ultimately.
And to that point, Dr. Escamilla, in looking at our peer colleges in that large college group, I can't recall if there are any that are in a port city, correct? And while, Dr. Wilson, you mentioned that it's important for us to look at our peers, we still are incredibly unique compared to some of those other communities, especially when it comes to our economy.
So there, Laredo's considered a port, an inland port.
True.
We're a seaport,
Right.
obviously. But to your point, Regent Everett, is that we're in South Texas, just in South Texas, which includes very large and small institutions. If we just look at everybody south, including San Antonio South, it's a very different curriculum. It's a very different economy. Certainly, as you look at our peers, Amarillo and the other 8. Let me see, Amarillo, Bland, Central Texas, Laredo, Navarro, North Central, Tyler. I mean, I used to work at Tyler, so I know it is that you're exactly right. They are absolutely different. The only thing about the only grouping within, the only thing that we have in common here is that we're community colleges in Texas, and the curriculums are very different.
Right, and so what I'm finally understanding is, while we may all be community colleges, the needs of this community are vastly different from other communities in terms of what we offer.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say from I look at it as an evolutionary kind of perspective. What San Jacinto is and what it has been is a very large institution, is something that we are most similar to, but we're significantly smaller. And then down the continuum, Texas Southmost is what is the smaller version of us two, of Del Mar and San Jacinto, and they are trying to emulate us. Well, think about it: Brownsville, Port of Brownsville, Port of Corpus, Port of Houston. 3 different sized institutions, all in different points of their their existence. And so those are the things that I think about on a regular basis, and those are the people that I talk to and learn from and learn with and so forth, and share commonalities with, to your point.
If I might clarify, hopefully this is helpful. So this cohort is what the coordinating board has determined solely based on credit enrollment in the fall every year. This is our cohort. So, but your numbers, when we go on to your slide showing Del Mar College, our Texas large college cohort, and all Texas colleges, that is based on our entire enrollment in credit and non-credit courses. So that is not based on just the 10,000 fall credit enrollment. This is based on credit, non-credit, contract, every, is that correct? No, this number is just based on credit. This is just credit. Okay, so this is based just on the 10,000. So we're not even getting credit here then for the other 10 or 12,000 students that we teach in non-credit courses. Okay.
Yeah, and the other anomaly is that this is fall, these are, fall, I'm trying to find the slide. They're fall, COVID fall, because Laredo does not have 5,000 credit students. They are our size, they have 10, 12, their population, student population was cut in half almost. They, for whatever reasons over there, so that number's not even accurate. This is COVID fall number.
No,
And actually, when we looked at the comparison, I gave the fall numbers, but what we're looking at here is 2019. So, yes.
5,000?
That was 2020. So we're actually looking at two different years here.
Yeah, there's an anomaly in there with Laredo, because Laredo is our size. It
Okay.
doesn't show that for some reason. I apologize, I got lost in that.
so what would these numbers look like for us if we actually included our non-credit students as well? Because again, for us, that's 10 or 12,000 students a year.
Right. That's a tremendous difference.
Right. That's true.
But these are just
But they
those
don't-
who graduated that received a certificate, so it's not going to include all those other numbers that you're looking at the whole.
But if you're looking at head count
Yeah.
by fall, and then if you add to it, to Regent Scott's point, if you add to it the non-credit side, that's where we will distinguish ourselves, because the other colleges look to us. There's very few colleges who have the percentage of continuing education contact hours that we have. It's upwards of 11% now. It's 11% of our production overall. Okay, so you kind of have to break it down that way. Other colleges don't do that. Very few do. I think Howard does, and it's a very, very small school. But so it depends. You got to frame the definitions and the variables in
Right.
the front end and be all on the same page. Because if you're looking at graduates, very different. Yes, and if you're looking at from what we're saying here, but if you pose it differently, like Regent Scott did, then it's a different.
It's a
it-
whole.
Wow.
It's a but well, contact hours is what it all boils down to. That's the big number as it compares. Again, I'll have some more information for you later on that today to kind of give you some scale and scope across the state and by peers. I have that information.
Okay. Which I guess illustrates the point of how complicated measurements are in this industry, because is a student coming to us for a degree? Are they coming to us for a certificate? Are they coming to us for a short-term credential? And they're coming to us for all of the above, and we satisfy the needs of the students regardless of what they're coming from. So we yeah, but we're not even counting, again, here, the short-term credentials.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I can add, this conversation is very, very valuable. And
Yes.
part of what we started this conversation out with is that we want to make adjustments, and we also want to make sure that we're measuring in a way that we think is valuable. So based on this discussion, I really do think that we need to take that holistic lens, even if the state does not. And we need to think through our comparisons a little bit better. And one of the things I like to say is data is very valuable, but it really is meaningless if you don't have the context. So some of these questions that you're asking are so, so valuable. The fact that we need to know how the state compares us to our peers, but we also need to know that our needs are quite different. And we may need to add in data to better understand.
May I ask briefly, do we anticipate the state changing how it looks at the data or the data that it considers important?
So it has been.
Okay.
Looking at it, but just looking. I'd like to see a lot more acting. So 60 by 30, we believe will change. The variables put in place there will probably see some change. this past legislation, the governor has signed a bill that has instituted a commission, and I think Chair Scott will be participating on this commission to look at how things are funded, therefore how are they defined. Those will have to precede the numbers, and so I think the short answer is yes, in some very big, broad ways.
But from our perspective, and I appreciate the fact that you might look at how you represent the data, this apples to apples comparison, I think, is important for what the state, again, asks us to report. But from our community standpoint, I think it is also important that we communicate to our taxpayers, to our business leaders, what our actual job placement is for all of our graduates and credential holders. So I think that would be an important piece for us to be able to document and show the trends, because that part of who we are is just as important to our community as the credit students. And so I think that it is important for us to understand those numbers and have that accurate reporting of those numbers on a regular basis, in my opinion.
Well, considering we have 12,000 students doing that, it's obviously important.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be a good thing to have at the same time as we're looking at this.
Good point, and especially given the information that Ms. Keys shared this morning, the robust programming that we offer our students, I completely agree.
Thanks for letting us spend some time digging into these numbers. It's very valuable for us.
So that's great. This is what we're doing this for. All right. Moving on to KPI 2, licensure and certification pass rates. This KPI looks at the percentage of students that successfully completed their licensure or certification exams. Again, this is looking at credit programs. The next slide will look at the specific programs that are included in the calculation of this KPI. We have met our KPI threshold, and our students' pass rates are also slightly above our peer group's average.
What do we attribute, there's a slight uptick, what are we doing, what do you attribute that to? Is that just we had better students this year, or is the college doing something specific in the curriculum or somewhere to improve the pass rate?
Let's look at this slide.
Well, you can see that what makes up that aggregate number is actually a piece of quite a few different programs. And we're always seeking to purchase new technology, make sure that our students are using the technology that they'll need in the workforce, that they are prepared to be successful. So I think it's just, I think it's a factor of our efforts for continuous improvement. And it's hard to say, considering this number is made up of quite a few programs together.
Well, you know, I see it's a small tick, but since it was a goal, wondering how we achieved it.
So the other thing is the faculty watch very closely these licensure certification things. When things go, and they have in the past, they've gone, they've fluctuated in the past, these licensure pass rates. And our faculty are very sensitive to it. And we've had changes for different reasons in leadership over the past. And I know Dr. Halcomb, who is our Chief Academic Officer and Vice President over instruction, she watches that very closely as with her deans. And they're making sure that these numbers are where they need to be. And when they're not, they sound off the alarms.
Do we get notice, or do we know when the tests are changed, or
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can adjust our curriculum?
yeah, well, they work with the advisory. Dr. Halcomb, I don't want to speak. Would you talk about that process with the advisory committees and so forth?
Yeah, the advisory committees, they do evaluate what is important in the courses in the program, but also the state, if it's a state licensure exam, they oftentimes let us know something's changing, and so we are alerted, and so then the faculty try to develop the proper coursework so that they can be better prepared for those exams. Okay?
Great.
Okay. This slide provides the details of our licensure and certification pass rates for the 2018-2019 academic year. It includes the pass rates for 16 of our credit programs that require licensure and certification exams, and our students' total average was 91.8%. Here's a visual representation of our 5-year trends. We have experienced an overall slight upward trend over the last 5 years. And going back to your question, Regent Kelly, I think some of the work that that Ms. Keys shared as well, partnering with our workforce and making sure that we're understanding what the needs are, I think has gone a long way to helping this number increase. Here you will see the details of this KPI for Del Mar College, our large college peers, and the state average. Our rates are slightly higher than our peers and the state averages. Additionally, our rate of change over time is higher than that of our peer group and our state average. I'll pause here for any additional questions about this KPI.
I actually have a question about this KPI and the previous one that I forgot to ask. You set your threshold at 85% and our target at 95, or I think the other one was 91%. You've set a threshold that is significantly lower than what we have achieved the last 3 years. Or can we talk about how those initial thresholds were set and why? And they were set in 2019 after we adopted the plan, so they're at this point almost 2 years old. But can we talk about those thresholds?
Yes, definitely. So that timing that you're mentioning is very important. So you're right. These thresholds and targets were set in 2019. And at that time, we looked at least 5 years of data back. So at that time, 85% seemed like a reasonable baseline. So over time, this has actually increased for us. So now that our numbers are higher, you can see that discrepancy, that it looks a little bit low. But the process of setting that threshold and target was based on the work of our strategic planning committee and looking at least 5 years of data at the 2019 timeframe.
So now we are looking towards that target goal as opposed to the threshold.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
exactly. And you'll see that variation for some of these targets and thresholds. Some of them we're still struggling with staying around the threshold, and others we far surpassed.
And that 5 years of data would not have included 2019, is that right?
No, it wouldn't have. Good point.
Other questions at this point? All right, great. Let's continue.
All right. Our last KPI for Goal 5 is industry-supported programs, and this KPI is actually pretty difficult to measure quantitatively or numerically. Because as we've discussed quite a few times this morning, we can actually accurately state that all of our career and technical education programs are industry supported, simply because they all must maintain a very close relationship with the workforce, with employers through their advisory board. So this one is one that we wanted to make sure we had a KPI on, but when it came to measuring the number, this one gets a little bit tricky. So today we want to share with you an example of our partnership with Cheniere Energy Incorporated. But I want to describe what our threshold here. Our threshold is we want to maintain these relationships, but our target is we're always seeking to improve, always seeking to strengthen. So in particular today, we're going to talk about Cheniere Energy Incorporated. Okay. This partnership with Cheniere Energy focuses on the programs of process technology, industrial implementation, and our millwright programs. A few of the highlights of this partnership include an apprenticeship program available to students in our sophomore year, funding for scholarships, the purchase of state-of-the-art equipment for our students to learn on, company participation in advisory committees so that our curriculum can meet industry needs, and also job placement opportunities after graduation. This is a partnership that we're very proud of, and I know if there's particular questions, I'm sure Ms. Keys can step in, but these are the type of relationships that we have and that we're seeking to build more of.
So as all these new employers that Ms. Keys was talking about come in, we're reaching out to them and setting up programs to meet their workforce needs?
Yes, sir, pretty much. So what we do is every technical program has an advisory committee. And so we go out and ask these companies to send a top-level executive or someone who's in that field to serve on the advisory committee, and then we begin that relationship. But also through corporate services and continuing education, we start calling on them usually as they break ground. Even during the construction phase, we start building those relationships and engaging them. I think this one with Cheniere Energy shows 5 years worth of work, really, to get to the point where they're fully integrated throughout the entire program in all ways. And so that's the goal.
Are there any additional questions about this KPI or our partnerships with workforce?
Just a comment, in 2009, there was $1 billion of investment coming to the coastal bend, and we said, hallelujah, we're on our way in 2009. That was a pipe company. And Lenore and I went to China to Tianjin to work with them to get that training program going. Lots happened since then. Lots and lots and lots of relationships have developed, very rich, deep relationships, and they have been, many of those industry partners have been very generous to the college in many ways, and we have served them extremely well. So big conversation there.
And that goes back to your point about how important it is to be at the table with the EDC so that you all are part of those conversations in the very beginning before it's even announced that somebody's coming here. So they know who you are. We're a relatively small community still, and they know that you are part of the group that makes those decisions and are here to serve.
They count on us, and employers count on us to be at the table. EDC counts on us to be there, and these employers are saying, where's your community college or your technical programs? They're asking that right away. And we're there, and I know Ms. Keys often has information that she can't share with anyone, I think, except me. I like that. About those employers coming over, so thank you.
They like to give them fake names.
I appreciate how hard this is to quantify and how hard it is to measure year after year because, again, it is in some ways dependent. But I think even some simple data points like the number of industry representatives in total on, 37 or 157 advisory committees are represented with 200 external volunteers from, just some general stats like that help us understand really the breadth of everything from advisory committees, the amount of scholarships over in the past year, over a 5-year period that come externally as a part of these partnerships. So again, some bigger bucket numbers that again may be hard to compare year after year, but really talk about the success of these relationships, how many internships were placed. Data that ought to be fairly easy to report, I think would be helpful for us to really understand the breadth and depth of these programs.
Oh, yes, and
Yeah.
the scope. Thank you.
Yeah.
Duly
Thank
noted.
you. Good recommendations.
I had one more question.
Yes, sir.
if
I'm
I
so
could.
sorry.
That's
Yes, sir.
okay. My concern is on the millwright program. When I took a tour of the West Campus a little while back, the instructor, fine gentleman, really seemed to be a huge asset to the college and to the people he was teaching, was talking about some of the students being recruited. As soon as they grasped the what they needed to be able to understand and to do in the workforce were being snatched up
And they're not
by
finished.
people that needed those skills before they get a certificate or before they get a degree. How do we keep, the whole goal of educating students is to make sure that they can get a job first off in the workplace and then be able to become productive members of society, be able to take care of their own family's needs. So how do we keep what we're doing that is really necessary from hurting the numbers in terms of completion or graduation?
It's a great problem. Lenora?
Thank
Yeah.
you. One of the ways is we're embedding this industrial certification through NAPTA. And so they may not leave here with a degree because once they get those jobs, and millwright's a tremendous example because we may have a cohort of maybe 12 to 13 students. And as soon as they get a certain skill set, they're hired, and they're
Yeah.
hired at $100,000 a year.
Yeah, so
I
what
mean,
are they
you know,
finished for?
So they don't wait around for that degree. And we address it in a couple of ways. One, and I appreciate what you said, Mr. Garza, about the faculty member, Danny Anderson. the faculty plays such a key role at that point in time in keeping those students engaged. And he really does. He works those students, he keeps them engaged as much as you possibly can to complete those degrees. But what we're doing is we're also embedding that industrial credential, the NAPTA credential. So if they don't get the degree, they at least get the credential, and we can track that credential. Now, we won't get credit at the state level because they still don't track it, but we do. We will. And so we're bundling as many as we can and meeting those students' needs.
Yeah,
But they're getting those jobs so well, so
Yeah.
quick.
Oftentimes, in the early days, that program didn't exist. We didn't have that. We've only had that for less than, what, 8, 9 years here?
Yes.
7, 8, 9 years. Because another college was teaching it in our service area. Lee College was. And in fact, the president then, Dennis Brown, calls me and says, "Hey, I'm teaching over there at Flint Hills. I just want to let you know we're servicing them. Y'all don't have that program." I said, "Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that." We flipped that, said we are going to have that vastly needed, that tremendously needed program. So we reacted to the community's needs for something we didn't even know or hadn't occurred to us in a while. So anyway, we moved quickly, stood up that program. In the early days, those students weren't even lasting a semester. They were in there 6, 8 weeks getting the basics and getting snatched up and being given $15, $20 plus an hour. It's gotten better. It's those relationships, it's those advisory boards. We're all protecting the program because we know that the further the students go, the better off everybody is. It's still not the case, as Ms. Keys is saying, but we watch it very closely, and we are making progress with more and more completers. It's a
And beyond
hot
just making the
program.
numbers look good, is it not also good for the students? I mean, is it true that, yes, they've got this job, but if for whatever reason it doesn't pan out, they'll wish they had that certification or degree,
Is
right?
there
That's
a way
right.
that there's an alternative route for those who get hired to finish online? I don't know.
If we can do one question at a time, that helps staff respond to one question at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'll say is yes and yes, in that students with a degree are much ahead. Later on in life, as you change career tracks, you always want to have that credential, that degree. What we've been able to do, I'm going to use process technology as an example, is they put most of the content, coming out of COVID-19, it's a big benefit. Now most of the content is online. However, all these programs do have a hands-on lab that's very much required face-to-face. Millwright is really a degree about any rotating part within a big industry part, so it could be a rotating part as big as this room, honestly, in an industrial setting. And so you can't graduate that student without having some hands-on experience. However, they can enhance their degrees now with some of the content online. So we're looking at all different ways to meet that need.
I would applaud you all, though, for having any length of relationship with these students, even if it doesn't mean completion. The fact that that we're providing that certification now, not somebody else, so we have at least some connection with them for a period of time. And if it's their goal to just get the certification and go to work, good for them. And I'm glad that we were there to support them. I don't want to impose our priorities because the state measures a certain data point on what we think may be good for somebody else. If we're there to help provide that certification to help them make $100,000 a year, more power to them.
The term stackable credentials, whether they're stackable, whether they're industry certifications, internal certifications and certificates, level 1, level 2, and those sorts of things. All of those building blocks matter. I have a brother that's made a tremendous living. He's my older brother. He made a tremendous living with a ton of those certifications. Does extremely well.
Is there an interest from industry to having the students they've hired without certifications finish their certifications?
Yes, and that's those are the relationships. Those are the conversations that we have. I'm sorry, Lenora, that's yours.
It's okay, you're okay. I was going to say yes, but there is an industry. This is the reality that I see. They say there's an interest in getting that they want to hire with a degree, but they hire the people, and then they work them long and hard. And so the reality is, how much can they come back to school?
Right, so
Yeah.
industry saying, we've got the guy we want, or gal,
Yeah.
and we've got the person we want, and we're gonna work them hard, we're not gonna provide time for them to finish their certification, or, that's not a priority for us.
Well, generally, they get their certification. They hire them with a certification, but they may not have a degree.
Great, okay, so getting the degree is not a priority for industry.
It's secondary priority. Let me say it that way. It's a secondary priority. Right now, they want the skilled workforce. That's their first priority.
Right now.
Yes. And then we do see them come back later and get their degrees. You know, we do.
And we're focusing, because of the word industry, we're focusing on our industrial sector, but this same example happens in healthcare, happens in our public safety credentials, et cetera. And what I've seen, especially in healthcare, is we get somebody with an LVN who then comes back to school and gets another certification and potentially works their way to an RN program, and hopefully then one day a bachelor's in nursing here at Del Mar College. And so this actually happens at all levels in all of our career and technology programs.
It seems like in some of those industries, for lack of a better word, what you can do and what you get compensated for is degree dependent.
Yes.
As opposed to industry, you can do the job in heavy industry, you can do the job, we'll let you do the job.
And they'll train you internally and keep you going. Right. Yeah, good point.
And if I can add, we want our students to be ready to come back. We want those relationships to continue. As Regent Garza mentioned, one of our faculty members, our faculty seek to make those relationships with our students. And that's the struggle, is that we understand they may have more immediate goals, but it's those relationships that keep them coming back and let them know whenever you're ready, come back. Because at some point, you may want that associate degree, you may want that bachelor degree, and Del Mar College will be ready for you. So those relationships are key.
I wanted to add one thing. When we talk about this, the employees coming back in the long days of the work, proximity to those plants and proximity to where they work becomes more and more critical, because we have to be there close so that the students can put that as part of their workday, and then you will see those completers.
So once again, you're talking about affordable educational model.
That's right. Yes, sir.
A lot to consider, a lot to think about. That's why it's part of our strategic plan. And we know that we do good work, but we're always looking to strengthen and help our students along their pathway, regardless of their goals. And their goals do change. So we're here for them. This brings us to the strategies portion of Goal 5, many of which we've already talked about as part of our discussion. And these are just a few examples. We actively seek to align our program offerings and curriculum with local needs. We develop new programs all the time. Just this afternoon, you'll hear 2 proposals for 2 new programs that we believe will meet local needs. Each career and technical education program also maintains an active advisory committee, which is made up of workforce partners, employers, educators, and other community members. The committees meet regularly to make sure that students are successful in the community. We also offer state-of-the-art facilities and equipment to ensure that students are learning on the equipment that they're going to need to use to be successful in the workplace. We also seek funding opportunities, as Ms. Keys talked about this morning, that allow us to partner with industry to help meet mutual goals. Some examples include grants through the Texas Workforce Commission, Texas Workforce Solutions, skills development funds. We're always looking for partnership to help meet those mutual goals. And finally, something that has been an underlying theme through today's discussion is advocacy. It's a very important strategy for making sure that our local, state, and federal bodies are aware of the need of this region. We are growing, we are here, and we are growing further. And our staff, faculty, and regents actively participate on numerous committees, numerous boards across the state to make sure that our Coastal Bend voice is heard. I'll now pause here for any further questions about our strategies or anything further about Goal 5. All right, hearing none, let's move on to our final goal of our strategic plan, financial effectiveness and affordability. This is the final piece of the puzzle of our work to ensure financial capacity, demonstrate fiscal stewardship, and maintain affordability for our students. This is a goal that fuels all of the other goals of our plan, and with this goal, we're able to remain flexible and continue to be operationally effective. Goal 6 has 7 KPIs, and we will again be telling our story through these indicators. My colleagues Raul Garcia, Mary McQueen, and Kathy West will be describing our progress with these KPIs. And I will now hand over the floor to Raul Garcia to discuss KPI 1, tuition and fees. Mr. Garcia?
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board. It's good to have some good quality FaceTime with everyone. Very nice. So let's get started. So the next few slides will focus on student affordability with various data points, including the cost of attendance, student loan debt, HERF student grants, and financial foundation scholarships awarded by the foundation. We will also transition the conversation to financial effectiveness. So let's get started with tuition and fees. So the college's moderate price point attempts to strike a balance between student affordability and maintaining the financial strength to move the college's student-centric strategic plan forward. With that said, Del Mar's cost of tuition relative to our peer group of large colleges is moderately priced at $1,600 for 15 semester credit hours. This is a savings of about $300 relative to our peer group of large colleges with an average price point north of $1,900. Our moderate price point is attributed in part to the college's practice in recent years of steady and moderate tuition changes. So we will now take a deeper look at the cost of attendance and the average transfer debt. Del Mar's cost of attendance of $1,660 is at the midpoint price range relative to our peer group. The Del Mar student will save north of $1,400 relative to a student attending Blinn College with a price point of $3,075. Another measure of affordability is the amount of debt carried by a student after attending college. On the average, the Del Mar student has the least amount of debt at an average of $13,577 relative to our peer group. So, using Blinn College as a benchmark once again, the Del Mar student cost of financing their education is $8,000 less than a student attending Blinn College. This is attributed in part to the college's moderate price point and once again, a practice of steady and modest tuition increases. Now, I also have to add that Del Mar College recognizes our students have faced many hardships at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, including job loss, food and housing insecurities, caring for a family member, loss of family member, emotional and mental illness. For this reason, the college will not change the tuition rate for the coming year. It will remain at $69 per semester credit hour for resident students. We are hopeful that this will help alleviate some of the pressures our students are having during the crisis while they courageously pursue life-changing educational opportunities at Del Mar College.
Can you tell us what's going on with Laredo? I think their average cost is over $2,000, and yet their students are carrying $8,300 in debt. What are they doing?
So these are the larger numbers usually are those colleges that are that have housing, they're residential in nature, and have more of those kinds of options for students. Those are Tyler will be another one. So when you're living on campus, meal plans, all of those things, plus tuition, plus books, plus cost of living, and so forth, they take out more. They take on more. Let me see. Hang on.
More debt.
More debt, more debt.
And you hit it.
In Laredo, they've got $8,324. They're taking on less debt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. my brain was saying Tyler. They don't take out loans in Laredo. There's two different, vastly different scenarios. They do not offer student loans at Laredo. And so you either are Pell qualified and or scholarships. Sorry. You said one thing and my brain was ready to go to the other side of the spectrum
Yes,
with
yes.
Tyler that takes on the more debt.
Would that be a possible explanation as to why they had such a reduction in student population?
We think it has a lot to do with it. But we don't really know. Everybody's trying to take care of their own right now.
I'm not here to judge.
Yeah, no, I understand. No,
Very
no,
nice.
So,
I understand.
so this debt is only from the college? It's not federal loans?
So yes, so when we talk about debt, is the federal financial aid loans type, that's factored into the state reporting process that we give out to the state. They summarize it, and this is the results of that reporting.
So Laredo would still have that debt?
The Laredo will still have, well, there's two types of debt that we're talking about, okay? So there's the debt that the student walks away in terms of financial aid, that your Stafford loans, those kinds of things, right? Then there's the auxiliary bond issuance. So to Mark's point, you have some of these colleges that have residential, and how do they finance it? Well, auxiliary bond. Well, I'd like to tell you that in 3 years' time, we're going to be done with our own auxiliary bond. So from a price point, that helps. From a student perspective, we also know that demographics are very similar to our institution, Laredo, and so depending on their estimated financial contribution will determine their financial aid piece of it. And if they cannot afford it, then obviously, and when I say financial aid, I'm referring to Pell, SEOG. If that's not enough, guess what? They're having now to go out and get debt to finance their education. So there's two ways of looking at it in terms of debt. One is the debt of the institution to finance the housing. The other piece is the student acquiring the debt to finance the education. Two different pieces impacting similar information, similar financial
And this
information.
number includes all of those? Is that
I'm
what
sorry?
And this number that you've got here for the average transfer debt includes all of those?
That includes the financial aid inherited by the student, which is the Stafford loan debt, and I think there's a few other ones, banking related debt.
So this doesn't include the institution debt, right?
Yes.
This is the
Is that what you're saying?
student,
Okay.
this is what the student pays
It's-
back.
Right. But
That's
the
what you're-
institutional share of the debt impacts in part our annual cost of attendance, right? So two ways of looking at it. Does that
Kudos,
help? Yes,
kudos to us, though, for being the second lowest in debt,
yes.
while we're the fourth lowest in terms of tuition costs. That,
Yes.
clearly we're helping the students
It
with
does, it does.
affordability.
Again, it just goes back and it tells a true tale of how student-centric our strategic plan is, and I think that's part of it. Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Moving right along. As I previously mentioned, our students have faced many hardships at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our federal government continues to respond with the proliferation of fiscal stimuli funding that started with the HERF Fund funded by the CARES Act appropriations on March of last year. HERF One, valued at $1.9 million, assisted 4,800 of our Del Mar students with significant need, including food and housing insecurity, technology needs, healthcare, and childcare needs. Our students received assistance ranging from $300 to $750 with the intent to assist as many students for the duration of 1 year of the grant period that started with the spring 2020 and ended with spring 2021. Now, our federal government recognizes that our student continues to struggle from the pandemic, which is why our government has responded with the latest HERF funding. Once again, this funding, the objectives are narrow with a focus on assisting students who are experiencing job losses, food and housing insecurities, caring for a family member, loss of a family member, and emotional and mental illness caused by the pandemic. In addition, the college's funding will be made available to a broader spectrum of students This time around, it will include students who have historically not qualified for financial aid. So current estimates of our budget plan suggest that the college will assist approximately 30,000 to 33,000 duplicate students through the end of fall of 2002. The grant will be awarded on a term-by-term basis with an average value ranging from $400 to $450. The grant will be awarded on a term-by-term basis for 6 consecutive terms beginning with the spring of 2020, which can a student can potentially receive up to $2,400 at a $400 pay on a per term by term basis. Lastly, the college is currently in the process of hiring a grant-funded full-time position who will perform student outreach initiatives with a focus on their needs in relation to the HERF pandemic and the HERF grant funding. Any questions? Very nice, thank you. All right. So now I will invite my colleague, Mary, to lead us in this conversation on scholarship awards. Thank you.
Good morning, Regents. Can you hear me? Okay, so you see where we are with the scholarships for 2019 and 2020. Our goals are to maintain or increase the level of scholarship support with the KPI target of 5%. You can see we did not reach those for 2020. We were at 1.8 million to almost 1,800 students in 2019, and that dropped to slightly under 1.5 million in scholarships to about 1,500 students in 2020. So what I think is really important for you to understand is those numbers are what the amount that actually is distributed to the students, not specifically what we budgeted to award. So their numbers are made up of 3 components. They are the direct scholarships. That's money we get from donors that are put into their scholarship fund, and the donors tell us, this is how much I want you to award each year. And then over X number of years, that particular fund is either replenished by the donor or it is completed. The second is the endowed scholarships. Those scholarships can only be awarded off the earned income of the invested component of it. So that's limited to how much we actually earned off of it. So that puts that particular component basically at the market, what's market variabilities are doing. The third component is what we call designated scholarship. These are pass-through scholarships, scholarships that other institutions award, but the foundation tracks those awards and actually puts them into their student components. So those different areas kind of show the flexibility. Next slide, please. How do I do this? I'm in control? That one? I just don't know where the controls are. So you can kind of see how it moves throughout the years. We have been up as high as almost $1.9 million, 1.8, a little over 1.8. And then we dropped down in 2020. The down arrow. And this is the number of students that we actually award. One of the components that the foundation is currently looking at is updating our spending policy. Now, that spending policy is basically going to determine our endowed spending. So we want to update that based on what are the current needs of the students, what's the earning capacity, how much we retain as a buffer. Multiple of our scholarships at this point are not just a 1-year scholarship, but 2-year scholarships until the student completes their actual program. That means we have to award, but we don't expense until the next year. So we'll retain a certain component of it to help these students through completion. The other is if a student doesn't meet the criteria in the fall, they will lose their spring award. And I think that's a lot of what we kind of saw happening in 2020. Remember, when we report in 2020, our fiscal year is June 30th. So almost half that year was COVID impacted. And we lost a lot of students right after spring break. So we had some major impact in the summer and the spring. But those are just some of the challenges you face when you're using donor money.
And do
Any
you
questions?
also offer, because of COVID and so forth, you did have emergency scholarships, correct?
We did have emergency scholarships. They're included in here.
Okay.
A lot of times our emergency scholarships, we probably raised about $250,000 in emergency aid, and we gave about $225,000 in that. Some of that was actually in the emergency. A lot of times we'll go in and on the emergency scholarships, we'll find a fund that matches what the student needs, so that we will continue to use the funds provided by donors instead of having those short-term emergency funds provided. So, other questions?
Is the decline specifically because of students leaving due to COVID and therefore not using their scholarship anymore, or is it due to a drop in the market and fewer funds available from the endowment?
Both.
Both.
Both. We take a snapshot on the endowment December 31st of each year. If you remember, December 31st of 2019, we saw a drop in the market. And so when we take that snapshot, that's what we budget, even though the market may come back, or even if the market drops, we have to take a snapshot at a certain amount at a certain time. Also, we find that we did receive a lot of additional endowed funding, but those additional endowed funds take a year to 2 years to actually produce enough that I can award and maintain the awarding. Any other questions?
If we have extra money now from 2020, what happens to that money in 21? So do we give out more scholarships? Do we save it?
Go ahead, but it's still there, if that's what you're saying. It's if it's not awarded 1 year or if somebody doesn't complete, it's there as part of the pool for the next year.
Correct. Based on what the donor objectives are. So, for instance, right now we're budgeting about $2 million for the upcoming fiscal year. A lot of that is because we had some funds available, and so we're finding those funds, and we're looking at about $2 million in awarding for the 2021-2022 year.
And do some of those funds come from the CARES and?
No.
No.
None of those funds come from the CARES.
None
None.
of
This
that.
is all donor funds.
Donor funds.
This is all from us going out and talking to donors and donors wanting to support the students here at Del Mar College and in the community. So these are all private funds.
Mary, can you talk a little bit about the endowment now and a little bit of its history?
The endowment right now is, we oversee assets of $32 million. Of course, that goes up and down with the market, but right now it's $32 million.
So, Regent Turner, there, $32 million in assets is a very different story than just a few short years ago. So there's that. There are those efforts, and I know Susan's smiling real big. She sits formerly sat on the.
Still sits as a
emeritus.
Oh, you're back.
emeritus.
Oh, that's right. As
She's
an
back.
emeritus.
She's
That's right.
emeritus.
That's right. I forgot. Okay. So that's why I see Susan smiling so much. That's a big deal. Those are 32 million extra dollars that have been raised and put into that endowment. Mary's been leading that charge for over 10 years now, and it's I think it was 6 when you got here.
8, actually.
Okay, close
was
enough.
8.
Close enough.
If
Well, I
I
was
might,
thinking it was.
if I might ask to clarify the pronouns, Mary, when you say we, you're not talking about Del Mar College, because Del Mar College does not give scholarships.
Correct.
The Del Mar College Foundation is the we that you are talking about when you say we.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. The Del Mar College Foundation is actually a separate entity from Del Mar College. We are what we call a an IRF, an institutionally related foundation. Our entire purpose is to support Del Mar College and the Del Mar College students, but we are a separate 501c3. We operate separately, and these reporting are from the foundation.
Because tax dollars cannot be used for scholarships. So,
Correct.
yeah. So.
They cannot.
Thank you for that distinction.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, you're
Unless,
right.
of course, it's HERFA money, but.
That's different.
Okay.
Doesn't
Any
mean
other
anything.
questions?
No, I just want to follow up. I think it's such an important component because when we look at tuition and we think about how affordable is that, how can students afford that, just keep in mind that a lot of those students are not paying that amount. Someone else has stepped in and done that,
Yes.
and it's tremendous.
Yes.
Thank you, community.
Thank you.
All right, so now we get some more detail. Dr. Kathy West is going to talk to us about our next KPI.
Good morning, esteemed Regents and Madam Chair. I am here to go over our KPIs that are financial ratios, which I know the calculations of those are very interesting. But anyway. Okay, so but before I get into each KPI, I want to give you a background on the whole concept of the financial ratios and the composite financial index. We chose the following financial ratios for our KPIs to help us measure our progress towards meeting Goal 6. The composite financial index combines these 4 ratios into a single metric, and since the 1980s it has been a widely accepted metric to measure the overall health of an institution. It answers 4 questions. Are resources sufficient and flexible to support the mission? Are resources managed strategically to advance the mission? Does asset performance and management support the strategic direction? And do operating results indicate the institution is living within available resources? The coordinating board produces this report, the financial condition analysis of Texas Public Community Colleges, and you can get it off of their website if you're interested. And their purpose in this report is to annually assess the financial health of the public community colleges in Texas. And they use the CFI index to do this. I'm happy to report that the trend for the college's KPIs for 2020 follow the trend in the statewide combined ratios. What you're going to see is a slight decrease in the CFI, the return on net position, and operating margin ratios, but an increase in the primary reserve and viability ratios. And I'm going to explain those as I get more into those. But with the first 2 ratios, they depend on the fluctuations year to year of the current fiscal year's operating revenues and expenses. And then the last 2 ratios relate to if the institution is maintaining a healthy unrestricted fund balance, and for Del Mar College, our newly created risk reserve fund balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each KPI. I'm going to show you the results for 2020, and then the next slide will be a background of that ratio. We did, in all the KPIs, meet our threshold of meeting the state standard, and then we achieved our target of exceeding the state standard. Okay, so starting out with our first one, return on net position. For 19, we were at 3.1. 2020 dropped to 7.1. Oops, went a little too fast. Okay, so the return on net position measures total economic return. It answers the question, is the college better off financially than it was a year ago? And you will see here that our ratio consistently runs higher than the state standard of 0, but you will see good job. No. You will see in 19 that we were at 13.1, but in 2020 we dropped to 7.1. Now, I did put the formula for each of the ratios at the bottom, and the components of the formula are taken from our CAFR, our financial exhibits. So I do have a beautiful Excel worksheet that I can forward if anyone is interested in those calculations. Okay, our next KPI, the operating margin ratio. You can see again, 2019 we were at 9.7, 2020 down to 6.0. And here, this graph shows what I was talking about, how each year depends on the current year level of operating revenues and expenses. In 17, we actually dropped below 0, but that year we did an adjustment, a significant adjustment to our faculty salaries and also exempt, and we have to look at that as an investment in our faculty and staff. Then we get up to 9.7 in 2019. 2019 was a very robust year for the college. But then in 2020, we did drop to 6.0, but, we had COVID, which affected operating revenues slightly. But another factor, though, is that operating expenses increased because, again, investment in faculty and staff with raises. And we also added some positions in our continuing education to meet our expanding demand in workforce, as Lenora has spoke with y'all about. And also in here, we see the purchase of furniture and equipment for our new buildings that opened on the east and west campus. So even though the ratio drops, it doesn't mean it's, necessarily a bad thing. It's still very healthy and, of course, better than the state standard of 0. Okay, then moving on to the last two, which center around your balances of your unrestricted fund balance and for the college, the risk reserve ratio. You will see in 19 it was at 0.44, and we gained a little tick there up to 0.45. Here is the graph that shows from year to year, and this measures financial strength and flexibility, answers the question, how long can the college survive without additional net position generated by operating revenue? And as you can see, the college consistently runs higher than the state standard of 0.14. Okay, and the last one is the viability ratio, again centered around those unrestricted fund balance, healthy fund balance that we maintained. And this one is all about debt management. Measures the availability of expendable net position to cover debt, and answers the question, how much debt can the college pay off with existing resources? And we consistently run higher than the state standard of 0.42. So that brings an end. Oh, but wait, I gotta talk about the composite financial index. Okay, now this one takes all of the ratios that I just went over, and you put it into a metric, and then you add weight factors. You see just a slight downtick, and then here you can see though that we consistently run higher in this ratio. And then here on this slide, I've just put the different components of the CFI. And I will end that the results of our 4 financial ratios, along with the CFI, indicate that we are achieving our budgetary goals annually, maintaining our healthy unrestricted fund balance, also creating our new risk reserve balance. The college remains financially stable. Any questions?
No questions for Dr. West? Yes, Mr. Garza.
In terms of the ratios, I saw some we went way up and then went down. But the question is, do we have a goal? What do we consider acceptable level? When we went up to that 13.1 and then we dipped back down to
Right.
7 or 8, What do we think? I mean, as a board or as a college, what do we think is an acceptable level so that,
Well, our threshold is to meet the state standard, of course, which we consistently run well above that. And then our target is to exceed the state standard. So we are reaching our goals. Do you
but
want
if
to
the-
add to that,
but the
Raul?
state standard is 0? I mean,
Right.
how do you?
But there
Said-
are ones that run below.
They're negatives.
Yeah.
They're not all
Yeah.
not all colleges can even run in the positives as a whole. So that what the state's trying to do by setting it as such is to equalize the state, the other the other 49 colleges, so that all are at least on the plus side. For us to consistently stay above the state benchmarks is a goal within itself. And as far as a threshold number, it's not been, we didn't set these parameters as we've set others. That being said, we're noting that, we're talking about that. Raul, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. Number one is we need to understand that this is a state's level stress test, right? Came out of the 2007-2008 crisis where policy changed for the banking industry and they introduced some stress testing. We're now seeing that on our side of the business. And so, number one, our target is to stay outside of the state levels, right? We don't want to get into trouble with the state. We want to get that state appropriation to continue to come to us and any other state grant funding that's available, right? So we want to show strong financial stability, right? The question is, how do we benchmark ourselves? And I say, it all depends, right? What is the defined framework of your student-centric strategic plan? That defines from us how we're going to spend and invest over the next 5 years. Now, you may see fluctuations go up and down over the years. What that means is, hey, we're investing on certain things. For example, equipment, right? Okay, we get it. That's part of, managing our finances and aligning that to the strategic plan. How about managing a disruptive crisis like the pandemic? Well, we saw some bouncing around, fluctuation. Why? Because we set aside dollars to deal with a risk reserve fund, right? So at the end of the day, the true story here is that we have a strong balance sheet. Now, we can fluctuate. Again, it all depends on various external conditions, right? There's variables that affect our property taxes, variables that affect our state appropriations, and then the state of the economy, right? But we have a sound financial balance sheet that we can fluctuate through those variations. So if we say we're going to target, hey, X amount of dollars, I'd say, well, you're going to become flat and stale quickly, right? So it's like, how do we plan forward? What is the vision of where we want to take today's institution 5 years down the line? And how do we capture those dollars? And you're going to see those fluctuations. As long as we stay away from the state level thresholds, I think we're good. We're solid.
Well, I think we're solid too. Even the time, there was one graph in there which showed us dipping below the zero. But I remember back in the city when the gap rules changed and you had to carry additional dollars related to your retirement package or your retirement program, right? And I kind of think that falls in the same time frame or same time schedule as that. Am I not correct?
So very good point. Very good point. So yes, those accounting changes do tend to impact the financial reporting piece of it. But I have to say that these ratios right here exclude that gap that you're referring to that goes back to 2017 relating to pension and OPEB. That's excluded. That's taken out of the equation. And we didn't define that. The state didn't define that. It was actually the Moody's and the KPMGs who designed this stress test framework, and that took place many years ago. And so all those folks got together and say, what is the impact on these ratios? And they made a decision to exclude it intentionally because it distorts the ratios. So what you have in today's ratios exclude that specific GASB 67, 68 out of the equation because it distorts the information and it does not really represent the true financial condition of the institution. Hopefully that helps.
So that dip was directly attributed to just a change in strategy related to salaries?
That dip was, that year was increase, we adjusted the faculty staff salaries. So we consider that an investment in our faculty and staff. That caused that dip.
Thank you.
I think what would be helpful, and so I appreciate the narrative, and I think it's important to understand the narrative, but when we see those kinds of dips, to try to be really specific on, for example, the operating margin ratio. So because of COVID, we invested in these three things. Had COVID not come, our operating ratio might have been different, but we had to quickly invest in technology and do some training. So is that specifically what you're talking about on the 2020 dip? Because that went
For 2020, it was slightly COVID.
okay.
But it was increase in faculty and staff salaries, purchase of equipment and furniture to furnish the buildings, which, I mean, we had the main building here, the west building, and then I believe that was most of it for the operating expenses went up considerably from the year before. Then the operating revenues went down slightly. So just the combination of those two caused that ratio to go down. But again, it's still a very healthy,
Right.
very healthy ratio. Yeah.
Madam Chair, that is very useful feedback because I think we're now ready to transition the narrative, right? The first year, the narrative was introducing the team and the ratios and helping understand the mechanics and what does it mean. But reality is these ratios really tell the true story of how these resources tie into the strategic vision. And we sort of touched on that a little bit more. And I think now that we have a more well-grounded understanding of the ratios, we can now take that narrative to another level to say these are the strategic initiatives or decisions made by the college that tie into the strategic plan, and that's the impact on those ratios.
And I'd like for you to help the board understand here decisions that the board made or the board approved, you know, the administration's recommendations. So it's not like you're out there doing these things without the board's knowledge. It's important to
point. Yes.
especially as we
Right.
move through several new regents, to remind folks where the board decision points come in, and maybe even in the future, by making this decision, this might mean our operating margin ratio might go down this year. I mean, you might want to flag us to that in advance so that we're prepared and understand, again, the impact of those decisions. So because I don't want this to look like something that is happening without the board's knowledge, but helping us tie decisions that we make to these financial indicators, I think is going to be important.
So I'm very excited. You've brought up a very good point. Every time we come up here and talk about these are the initiatives that we're talking about, maybe there's some added language and say, this is going to be the impact on the ratio 12, 24, 5 years down the line. I love that idea.
Yes.
Wonderful idea.
And you'll see in the budget process this afternoon where we're tying every incremental amount of money that is asked for now has to be tied to the strategic plan. So we can do a better job of linking that to how our ratios are going to end up at the end of the year. So very good point.
Be careful what I ask for. I just might get it.
Very good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic?
Okay,
Can you have a
so-
couple of wrap-up
so-
slides?
so,
Thank you.
I think we have 2 more slides.
Yep.
I'll try to rush through it real quick. So a few closing words on our forward outlook of Goal 6. The college will continue to assess student affordability by looking at various data points, including the ones previously presented. In addition, we will continue to assess student tuition rate adjustment to strike a balance between student affordability and funding for tactical activities. That support our student-centric strategic plan. Lastly, the college will continue to adjust the current HERF 2 and 3 spending plan to make sure that we assist the emergency needs of our students at a wider scale relative to the current pandemic that they're facing. Mary, do you have any short words for the regarding the foundation?
Just a couple.
letting y'all know we are moving forward. I think I reported to this board in 2020 that we had done an assessment in 2019 on our special events and the effectiveness of special event fundraising, and did a strategic move away from special event fundraising over to face-to-face one-on-one donor fundraising. We are currently at about $3 million a year that we average 5 years. $3 million a year that we bring in to the foundation specifically for projects for the college or student scholarships. So I think the rest we've already talked about, and I think what you see on here is the Bernie Spring Bash, which is one of the special events we did retain. We did restructure it for 2020, and then COVID hit, so we restructured it again. This year had to restructure it once again. And what we've created is online mini campaign fundraising specifically for different partner areas within the college. So the art department and the music department, they partnered with us on many fundraising components, and each one of them had a goal. And what we're trying to do is take out and look at those different departments and help them as best we can based on their short-term identified goals.
Okay, from a fiscal management perspective, the college will continue to enhance our long-term financial planning and budget process that will drive the long-term financial sustainability of the college. We are planning to leverage new technology to make further enhancements to our recent new budget forecast. This will begin with using the financial tools offered in the financial model of campus management that is scheduled for implementation in the coming months. In addition, Dr. West and Dr. Wilson are collaborating to make enhancements to the college's budget report that will further demonstrate our resource allocation to tactical activities that will help drive our strategic plan. In addition, the new budget report will be submitted to Government Financial Officers Association for a possible award on budget financial reporting. And in addition, we'll definitely continue to figure out how to embed our strategic vision of the ratios and future strategic initiatives. That concludes our presentation.
Questions? Yes.
Yes.
I just had one follow-up question going back to the debt, the average transfer debt, that $13,577 that you have for Del Mar. Is that yearly or is that for completion? Because it would be hard because some aren't completing, some are moving out, some are
Yes,
just,
yes.
So is that yearly? So
The short answer is the duration of the student. It may take them a year, it may take them 2 years, it may take them 3 years. Whatever the case may be, whenever they graduate, clock stops. That's the debt. That's
so,
the debt.
So the 13,000 is just really an average.
It's an average, yes.
Okay.
But I will also say it's also a year.
Okay.
Yearly, right? Because it's a report, it's a reporting number that
That's
changes
good.
year after year.
I just wanted
Right.
to
Okay,
make sure.
good.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank
Couple
you.
of wrap-up comments, Dr. Wilson?
Let's wrap up this productive morning. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for my co-presenters, Mr. Garcia, Ms. McQueen, and Dr. West. All right, it's now time for the conclusion. We've mentioned a few times this morning that the college has an operational strategic plan. This is our living document that changes as needed. And just recently, we updated the operational strategic plan in February to reflect some of the changes that were made due to COVID-19. So we do anticipate that this plan will change pretty much once a year, and it's adjusted with your feedback and also the feedback of the Strategic Planning Committee, which includes our entire executive team and representatives from all across the college. Here's a visual representation for those of you who took part in our workshops early on, 3 years ago now, of our planning process. As you can see, this is a cycle that really never ends. We consistently seek to improve, look and see how we're doing, and learn from our actions. And this current plan is in effect through August 2024. As of this morning, we have completed one full cycle of review of all of our goals. You can anticipate that we will start the review again this fall with goals 1 and 2, and then following in the spring with goals 3 and 4, and then around this time next year with goals 5 and 6. As we finish this cycle, I'd just like to take a moment to thank you for your time and putting such a high priority on looking at our goals, our objectives, and how we consistently seek to move forward. We understand that this is quite a bit of time on your part, but the questions that you ask us and the discussions that you have really help us to hone in on our vision and help us to make improvements for the future. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your time during the prior workshops, and we look forward to coming back to you with new and updated data. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Wilson. Thank you for the entire team for your work today. Now the board's going to go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 regarding pending and contemplated litigation or settlement offer with possible discussion, action, open session, and the seeking of legal advice from counsel on pending litigation or contemplated matters or claims with possible discussion and action in open session. And under Texas Government Code 551.074A1 regarding the appointment of employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, dismissal of public officer and employee, including the appointment to fill an at-large regent vacancy, and the annual evaluation of the college president and president's contract, and the annual board self-evaluation with possible discussion and action in open session. We will come back before the stated start time of our next meeting at 1 p.m., but we will do closed session until approximately, I think, 12:30 or 12:45 or so. The time now is 11:25 a.m., and we'll take just a few minutes to clear the room. The board has reconvened from our closed session during workshop at 12:52 p.m. There's no action coming out of closed session. This meeting is adjourned at 12:52. We'll reconvene at 1 p.m.